want to begin by admitting something quietly, almost the way a scientist admits uncertainty before running an experiment. For a long time, I believed that transforming the body required conflict. Hunger versus willpower. Discipline versus desire. A daily negotiation where the body was treated like an obstacle that needed to be controlled, silenced, or overridden. That belief is not accidental. It is woven into modern culture, into headlines, into before and after photos that rarely show the cost paid in stress hormones, disrupted sleep, or a damaged relationship with food. So when I decided to begin a 30-day challenge to transform my body without starvation, it was not just a physical experiment. It was a philosophical one. I wanted to see what would happen if, instead of fighting biology, I listened to it. For most of my life, I treated my body as something that needed to be conquered, as if it were standing in the way of the person I wanted to become. Every plan I followed carried an unspoken assumption that my biology was flawed, lazy, or somehow working against me. Hunger was labeled weakness, fatigue was framed as lack of discipline, and weight gain was interpreted as failure. Yet when I began to look at the body through a scientific lens rather than a judgmental one, that entire narrative started to fall apart. The human body is not an obstacle. It is an intelligent system shaped by survival, constantly reading signals from the environment and adjusting in ways that once kept our ancestors alive. Starvation, from the body's perspective, is not a self-improvement strategy. It is an emergency. When food intake drops sharply, the body does not applaud effort or reward motivation. It activates protective mechanisms that have been refined over thousands of generations. Energy expenditure subtly decreases. Movement becomes less spontaneous. Hormones shift to increase hunger and preserve stored energy. Fat tissue, often blamed as the problem, is actually the body's long-term safety reserve, and under threat, it becomes guarded more fiercely. This is not rebellion. It is intelligence doing exactly what it was designed to do. Understanding this changes the emotional tone of transformation. Instead of anger, there is respect. Instead of force, there is curiosity. The body does not understand modern aesthetic goals or social pressure. It understands signals of abundance and scarcity, safety and danger. When we starve it, even in the name of health, it interprets that scarcity as a reason to slow down and hold on. Metabolism is not a static engine. It is adaptive. It responds to perceived threats with conservation, not generosity. This realization reframes many past struggles. Plateaus are no longer evidence of failure. They are evidence of adaptation. Cravings are not moral weakness. They are biological alarms. Fat regain after extreme dieting is not a lack of commitment. It is the body restoring balance after a perceived famine. Once this is understood, the relationship with the body can shift from adversarial to collaborative. The body's intelligence is visible in how it prioritizes survival over aesthetics. Muscle tissue, which requires constant energy to maintain, is often reduced first during starvation because it is metabolically expensive. Fat, which is efficient and protective, is conserved. This is why extreme restriction can lead to a smaller scale number but a weaker, less energetic body. The appearance may change briefly, but the internal environment becomes less resilient. True transformation cannot be built on biological panic. When nourishment is adequate, however, the body behaves differently. Hormonal signals stabilize. The nervous system relaxes. Energy becomes available for repair and adaptation rather than defense. In this state, fat loss can occur not because the body is forced, but because it feels safe enough to release stored energy. Safety is the missing concept in most transformation conversations. Safety is not emotional comfort alone. It is physiological assurance that resources are available and threats are minimal. Seeing the body as intelligent also introduces humility. We are not in full control, no matter how detailed the plan or how strong the motivation. We influence the system, but we do not command it. Biology responds to consistency, not intensity. It responds to patterns, not punishment. When we stop trying to dominate the body and start working with it, progress becomes quieter but more reliable. This perspective also dissolves shame. If the body is intelligent, then its responses are logical. Weight gain after restriction is not betrayal. Fat storage during stress is not laziness. Fatigue under chronic pressure is not weakness. These are predictable outcomes of a system doing its best to protect itself. Compassion becomes practical rather than sentimental. It becomes a strategy that lowers stress hormones, improves decision-making, and creates internal conditions where change is possible. Once the body is no longer treated as an enemy, listening becomes possible. Hunger, fullness, energy, and fatigue stop being nuisances and start becoming data. Transformation becomes an ongoing dialogue rather than a one-sided command. The body does not need to be broken into compliance. It needs to be supported into cooperation. Because when survival is assured, adaptation follows. And when adaptation follows, change unfolds naturally without fear, without urgency, and without the quiet damage that starvation leaves behind. For a long time, I believed that progress required taking something away. Fewer calories, fewer meals, fewer pleasures, fewer moments of satisfaction. The underlying assumption was that the body needed to be deprived in order to change, as if abundance itself were the problem. But when I began to study the body more closely, not through trends or slogans but through physiology, it became clear that deprivation does not create order inside the system. It creates noise. Real fat loss begins not when food disappears, but when nourishment becomes precise, intentional, and sufficient. The body operates through signals. Hormones, enzymes, and neural messages are constantly exchanging information about energy availability, stress, and demand. When nourishment is inconsistent or insufficient, these signals become distorted. Blood sugar fluctuates, hunger hormones spike unpredictably, and energy levels swing between highs and crashes. In that state, the body is not focused on long-term adaptation. It is focused on immediate survival. Fat storage becomes more likely, not less, because uncertainty demands preparation. Replacing deprivation with nourishment changes the entire internal environment. Protein intake sends a powerful signal that muscle tissue should be preserved and repaired. This alone alters how the body allocates energy because muscle is metabolically active and biologically valuable. Fiber-rich foods slow digestion, moderate blood sugar responses, and feed the gut microbiome, which plays a role in inflammation, appetite regulation, and even mood. Healthy fats support hormone production and neural function, creating stability rather than volatility inside the system. Nourishment also influences the nervous system. When meals are adequate and regular, the body spends less time in a heightened state of alert. Cortisol levels ease, digestion improves, and satiety signals become clearer. This calm internal state is not just psychological comfort. It is a biological prerequisite for fat loss. A stressed system hoards energy. A supported system can afford to release it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of nourishment is its role in appetite regulation. Many people fear that eating enough will lead to overeating, but physiology suggests the opposite. When the body trusts that food is available, hunger cues become more accurate rather than more intense. Cravings driven by deficiency and stress begin to fade. What remains is a quieter, more specific signal that reflects genuine energy need rather than panic. Blood sugar stability is central to this process. Sharp spikes, followed by crashes, create cycles of hunger and fatigue that mimic lack of willpower but are actually predictable metabolic responses. Nourishing meals that combine protein, fiber, and fat slow glucose absorption and reduce insulin volatility. Over time, this improves insulin sensitivity, allowing cells to use energy more efficiently rather than storing it unnecessarily as fat. Micronutrients, often overlooked, play a silent but essential role. Vitamins and minerals act as cofactors in metabolic reactions, supporting energy production at the cellular level. When these nutrients are lacking, the body may feel tired even when calorie intake is sufficient. This fatigue often leads to reduced movement and increased cravings, further complicating fat loss. Nourishment is not just about calories. It is about providing the tools that metabolism requires to function smoothly. There is also a psychological shift that occurs when nourishment replaces deprivation. Food stops being an enemy and becomes a form of communication. Each meal sends information about safety, consistency, and care. This changes behavior in subtle but powerful ways. Decisions become less reactive. Eating becomes more intentional rather than compulsive. The cycle of restriction and rebound begins to lose its grip because the body no longer feels threatened. Fat loss in this context becomes a byproduct rather than the sole objective. When the body is nourished, trained, rested, and supported, it naturally seeks efficiency. Excess energy that is no longer needed for protection can be released. This process is slower than starvation-driven weight loss, but it is also more honest. It reflects true changes in body composition rather than temporary shifts in water or muscle. Perhaps the most important realization is that nourishment is not indulgence. It is alignment with biology. The body evolved in environments where food availability fluctuated, and it learned to respond wisely to those fluctuations. When we provide consistent nourishment, we tell the body that it does not need to prepare for scarcity. In that message, fat loss becomes not an act of force, but a quiet adjustment, emerging from cooperation between intention and physiology, sustained by trust rather than fear. For years, movement felt like a form of negotiation with guilt, something that had to hurt enough to justify eating or resting. Exercise was framed as compensation, a way to undo choices rather than a way to support life. But when movement is viewed through the lens of biology instead of morality, its true purpose becomes clear. The body does not respond to motion based on how intense or punishing it feels. It responds based on the signals that motion sends about safety, demand, and adaptation. Movement is communication. Each time the muscles contract, they send messages to the nervous system and to distant organs about how energy should be used. Low stress, consistent movement tells the body that energy is needed regularly, not urgently. This kind of signal encourages fat oxidation without triggering defensive responses. Walking, gentle cycling, and daily physical activity improve mitochondrial efficiency, allowing cells to produce energy more effectively from stored fat without elevating stress hormones. When movement becomes excessive or combined with insufficient nutrition, the message changes. The body interprets that combination as threat. Cortisol rises, recovery slows, and muscle tissue becomes vulnerable. From a survival perspective, breaking down muscle under stress is a way to conserve energy. This is why punishing workouts paired with restriction often lead to fatigue, stagnation, and loss of strength rather than meaningful fat loss. The body is not being challenged, it is being warned. Resistance training plays a unique role in this conversation. Lifting weights or applying load to muscles signals that strength and lean tissue are necessary for survival. In response, the body prioritizes muscle preservation and repair even during fat loss. This does not require exhaustion. It requires consistency and adequate recovery. When muscle is protected, metabolism remains more robust, insulin sensitivity improves, and the body becomes more willing to access fat stores for energy. Consistency matters more than intensity because the body adapts to patterns, not isolated events. Sporadic bursts of extreme effort do not create lasting change. Repeated moderate signals do. Daily movement reinforces the idea that energy will be used and replenished regularly. This predictability reduces the need for the body to store excess energy as a precaution. There is also a neurological component to movement that is often overlooked. Gentle, rhythmic activity calms the nervous system. It lowers baseline stress and improves sleep quality, both of which directly influence body composition. When the nervous system feels regulated, appetite signals become clearer and recovery improves. The body becomes more responsive to training rather than resistant to it. Perhaps the most transformative shift occurs when movement is no longer tied to punishment. When exercise is used to honor the body instead of correct it, adherence becomes natural. There is no internal battle to overcome, no countdown to rest days as escape. Movement becomes something the body expects and welcomes, not something it fears. In that state, fat loss is no longer extracted through force. It unfolds as a natural response to clear, consistent communication between effort and recovery, between demand and support, between the body's need to move and its need to feel safe. For a long time, sleep and stress were treated as side notes in conversations about body change, acknowledged but rarely respected. Food and exercise took center stage while the nervous system quietly absorbed the consequences, yet the body does not compartmentalize experience the way plans do. It processes psychological stress, physical strain, and emotional pressure through the same biological pathways. When those pathways remain activated for too long, body composition shifts in predictable ways, regardless of diet or training effort. Sleep is not passive rest. It is active regulation. During sleep, hormones are recalibrated, tissues are repaired, and metabolic decisions are made at a cellular level. When sleep is restricted, hunger hormones drift out of balance. Signals that indicate fullness weaken, while signals that amplify appetite grow louder. At the same time, insulin sensitivity declines, meaning the body struggles to move energy efficiently into cells. In that state, fat storage becomes more likely even when calorie intake has not changed. Chronic stress compounds this effect. Elevated cortisol alters how and where fat is stored, particularly around the abdomen, not as punishment, but as protection. Cortisol's role is to ensure quick access to energy during perceived threat. When stress becomes constant, that temporary response turns into a long-term pattern. The body stays prepared for danger that never arrives, holding on to energy just in case. The nervous system state determines how the body interprets everything else. A regulated system can differentiate between effort and threat. A dysregulated system cannot. Intense training, calorie restriction, and mental pressure all look the same to a stressed body. They are signals to conserve, not to release. This is why progress often stalls when life feels overwhelming, even if nutrition and workouts are carefully controlled. Regulating stress does not mean eliminating challenge. It means balancing stimulation with recovery. Deep breathing, time outdoors, reduced mental noise, and consistent routines all send safety signals through the nervous system. These signals lower baseline cortisol and improve the body's responsiveness to nutrition and movement. When the nervous system feels supported, fat loss becomes metabolically possible rather than hormonally blocked. Sleep quality amplifies these effects. Consistent sleep timing stabilizes circadian rhythms, which influence hormone release, digestion, and energy use. Poor sleep fragments these rhythms, creating confusion inside the system. Hunger appears at odd times. Energy dips unpredictably. Cravings intensify not because of lack of discipline, but because the brain is seeking quick energy to compensate for fatigue. When sleep and stress are addressed together, a subtle recalibration occurs. Appetite becomes more predictable. Recovery improves. Movement feels lighter. Decisions require less effort. These changes are not dramatic, but they are cumulative. They reshape the internal environment in which fat loss either succeeds or fails. Perhaps the most overlooked truth is that rest is not the absence of progress. It is the condition that allows progress to continue. The body cannot adapt while under constant threat. When safety is restored through sleep and nervous system regulation, metabolism regains flexibility. Hormones regain rhythm, and the body begins to respond not out of fear, but out of balance. Lasting physical change rarely arrives with urgency, even though urgency is what most plans promise. The idea that the body must be shocked, rushed, or forced into transformation is deeply rooted in modern culture, yet it contradicts how biological systems actually adapt. The body responds to repetition, predictability, and trust. When change is pursued with impatience, the signals sent are inconsistent and often threatening. When change is pursued with alignment, the signals are clear and sustainable. Trust is not passive. It is an active decision to believe that small, repeated actions matter more than dramatic interventions. From a physiological standpoint, the body cannot distinguish between a short-term plan and a long-term lifestyle. It only recognizes patterns. When nourishment, movement, and rest are consistent, the body adapts by optimizing energy use. When those inputs are erratic, it defaults to conservation. Patience allows these patterns to form without interruption. Urgency often narrows focus to outcomes rather than processes. The scale, the mirror, and external validation become measures of success. Yet, the most meaningful changes occur beneath the surface. Insulin sensitivity improves gradually. Mitochondria become more efficient over time. Hormonal rhythms stabilize slowly. These adaptations cannot be rushed without consequence. Forcing speed often means sacrificing stability, and the body eventually corrects that imbalance. Alignment with physiology means respecting feedback rather than overriding it. Fatigue becomes a signal to rest, not a challenge to push harder. Hunger becomes information, not an enemy to silence. Plateaus become periods of recalibration rather than reasons to escalate restriction. This mindset shift reduces internal friction. When resistance decreases, consistency increases naturally. Force creates compliance only temporarily. Restriction can produce rapid change, but it also produces rebound. The body remembers threat longer than it remembers progress. When threat passes, it compensates. Alignment avoids this cycle by never triggering it in the first place. Change emerges as a gradual reorganization rather than a dramatic collapse and rebuild. Time plays a crucial role in this process. Biological systems need repeated exposure to new conditions before they accept them as safe. Muscle adapts over weeks. Fat metabolism adjusts over months. Appetite regulation stabilizes through consistent nourishment. These timelines are not flaws, they are safeguards. They ensure that change is not accidental or dangerous. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of alignment is its psychological impact. When urgency fades, self-trust grows. Decisions feel less reactive. Setbacks lose their emotional weight. The process becomes integrated into life rather than isolated from it. This integration is what allows change to persist when motivation fluctuates. Lasting transformation does not demand perfection. It requires honesty, patience, and respect for the body's intelligence. When effort aligns with physiology, progress no longer feels like a battle to be won. It feels like a relationship being repaired, strengthened through consistency and care, allowing the body to respond in its own time, according to rules it has always followed, whether we acknowledge them or not. The human body is an archive of evolutionary wisdom. When we align with that wisdom rather than override it, change becomes quieter, steadier, and more enduring. These 30 days did not teach me how to starve more efficiently. They taught me how to listen more carefully. And in that listening, the body responded not with resistance, but with trust.